Welcome to Asian Agribiz Podcast. My colleague Zahra Imtiaz will be talking to Amy Brooks, Marketing Manager of Australian beef exporter Stockyard Beef, to find out what processors can do to stay relevant in the market for millennials. Millennials are going to be one of the most important consumer groups, with most of them globally calling Asia their home. Zahra and Amy will discuss how concerns such as sustainability, brand awareness, and quality are key concerns for the millennial consumers, and how Stockyard is making their mark by ticking each of these boxes.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, Zara. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So before we start, why don't you give our listeners an introduction about yourself and Stockyard?
Sure. So my name is Amy Brooks and I'm the marketing manager at Stockyard Beef Australia. I have been an agribusiness professional for over 15 years. And at Stockyard, we're dedicated to bringing people together over an outstanding piece of beef. We've been doing this since 1958. We breed, raise and feed premium grain-fed Wagyu and Angus cattle from our property located at John Darien in Australia on the famous Darling Downs.
That's great. So how do you see the millennial dividend in Asia? And how is this consumer segment pushing processors like yourself to innovate? Because if I'm not mistaken, you're in the third generation of the business, right?
Correct. So millennials, as you mentioned, have fast become the world's most important generational cohort for consumer spending growth, sourcing of employees and overall economic prospects. So millennials are being more attentive to where their food comes from and how it is prepared. And this is driving animal protein industries to focus more on sustainability and their social license. So our organisation has always invested heavily in our environment, social and governance activities. And the change for us has been in how we communicate about it. We're on a mission to be more transparent about our operation and place ourselves on the public record as acknowledging an issue and driving for change. And we believe it is resonating with our millennial consumers. Millennial consumers demand respect for the environment and animals as a bare minimum. So in order to prove that we do, our organisation gained what's called its Global Gap Accreditation in 2018. And we're the first beef brand in Australia to do it. The benefit for us lay in the independent and internationally recognised seal of approval for our production activities being safe, sustainable, and importantly, with deep respect for the well-being of our animals, all whilst alleviating the concerns of our millennial consumers.
Can you describe what this Global Gap Accreditation is?
Certainly. So Global Gap Accreditation is an accreditation that's internationally recognised standards on regenerative farming practices and livestock wellbeing management. So this accreditation is independently audited annually, and a large part of our status is drawn from our certified organic composted manure program, which turns a byproduct into a rich natural fertiliser that enables us and our neighbours to improve our soil health, pasture quality and ability to sequester carbon.
So basically you're saying the livestock process itself is done in a very sustainable manner.
Correct.
And is there any linkage to traceability? Are consumers able to find out about this when they look at a packet of Stockyard beef?
So currently we are working in market with a distributor in a program that involves traceability initiatives. So from our perspective as a producer, we produce a product that is a full primal piece of meat. And what we mean by full primal is that we send carton boxed beef overseas to international markets. So generally our retailers in market will receive that product and then they will be responsible for then further portioning that product and delivering it to their consumers.
Okay, so there's not a direct link to the final consumer.
There will be a direct link to the final consumer. And so we are in the early initial stages of a project that we're working on with the Meat and Livestock Australia. So that project will allow us to have provenance recognised and delivered to our consumers through what is a QR code that we position on the retail packaging.
How important is this? Do you think this would help you stand out in your market among other Australian beef exporters?
It certainly will assist us in standing out from other Australian beef exporters, but we do believe that there are other exporters that are also undertaking this initiative. And that comes back to what we were just talking about in that millennial consumers and consumers in general are looking for provenance and their stories and sustainability and what is happening, where their food come from and how it's being prepared.
Are you also undertaking any changes or innovations in how you produce your beef or like types of beef products to suit the millennial market?
Absolutely. So the reality is that the Australian production system has stringent standards that monitor for aspects of sustainability, such as animal wellbeing, workplace safety and environmental protections. So, and where there may be gaps, our industry's filling them. For example, the Australian meat industry is aiming for carbon neutrality by 2030. And at Stockyard, we of course are meeting all the standards set by our government and are setting targets across our core pillars of environment, animal wellbeing, people and community. So we are currently conducting a baseline carbon audit of activities so we can identify initiatives that will reduce our emissions. And we're also setting ourselves ambitious targets in animal wellbeing and workplace health safety standards, which are already industry leading. So everything we do with the families we feed in mind, from the way we care for our animals, our people, our community and our environment, and the modern and clean facilities that we maintain. Every process is done to satisfy the consumer. And so our approach to sustainability is roots first. For 60 years, the organisation has been working to improve every aspect of our production. And we've been able to do so by being rigorous in the innovations that are commercially viable across our whole industry, not just for us, and an impact on the community, environment and animal, not just our bottom line. So it's why our investments in this space have been so impactful, and our product is renowned globally for its premium quality and consistency.
Do you see plant-based or lab-grown meat among millennials as a challenge to traditional processors such as yourself? How should processors respond to this challenge?
Without sidetracking, we're talking about, at the moment, we're in a space where it's plant-based or lab-grown meat over beef products. So there has been a push, and lab and plant-based meat is here to stay, but will not take away from existing producers. It will just become another category. So from our perspective, it's really around telling the narrative and helping the millennial consumer to understand our production, our supply chain, how we have a vertically integrated supply chain, what that looks like, and assisting them to understand that better so that they can make better choices as a consumer also.
Stockyard was one of the pioneers in exporting beef to Japan, the Japanese market. And now this is a very consumer-driven, innovative market to supply to. And convenience is a big factor here, especially among millennials. So how do you, as processors, how do you innovate to keep up with the trends or make your product more accessible to these millennial consumers? Is it just about delivering easily packaged food, or is convenience beyond that?
Yeah, so as a producer with exclusive in-market relationships with distributors, we are in constant communication and conducting market research to remain in the lead. So our research to date indicates that we need to be focused on online shopping methods and ensure we're supporting our distributors with the required resources to be able to deliver a product for convenience. So quality, nutrition, and at Stockyard, our core purpose is to create inspiration, enjoyment, and memories through a shared appreciation of outstanding beef. So millennials are not adverse to paying for quality and supporting brands that deliver on this promise. So Stockyard just so happens to be one of those brands. And there are many ways that we will always try and remain in the lead and ahead of the trends.
What kind of innovations have you introduced into the market in the last few years?
So from a producer perspective, the innovations that we've introduced in the last few years has really been around telling our story and what that unique story is. So we've supported distributors with their in their online platforms and in supporting consumers. So obviously with COVID, there has been a focus and not being able to actually go out and do your own shopping. So there's been a huge move to retail and online shopping methods and delivery. So we have had to really step up and really be able to support our distributors in market. And we've been able to do that through a variety of ways, considering that we're not able to travel as well. We do have an online portal that is available to our distributors where they can access a wealth of information that they can support their consumers with. And so in terms of innovation for us, in the last 2 years, the business and the organisation has been focused on supporting our distributors and consumers in market with access to a premium beef product. And so that continued access has been available to them.
Have there been changes in the processing technology that you use? Have you had to change ways of preparing the beef for market, storage, packaging, things like that?
No, we haven't had to change the way that we process our products. We have been very fortunate that we haven't had many disruptions. We have had a few disruptions, but they have been surrounded by COVID issues. So short term, there were an array of market conditions, COVID restrictions and logistical challenges that we still continue to navigate, but we are still managing to have our product delivered into all 20 markets that we service.
Talking about COVID, post-COVID-19, this year, 2021, we saw total beef exports from Australia into Southeast Asia ease 25% year on year for the month of February. So how do you see this trend? Is it temporary or will it have a long-lasting impact on the Australian market for beef?
We don't believe that there's an immediate concern with the world's population still vying for sustainably produced beef and Australia sitting in the top 10 of beef producing countries globally. So this doesn't mean that we're not reacting as an organisation, ensuring that our methods of production and the product we produce is produced sustainably and to the highest quality standard. We won't be joining any bandwagons, so rather continuing to focus on the expected beef consumption that's predicted to continue and increasing by approximately 1.7% per year through 2022, but we'll also be keeping an eye, having said that, on its movements and communicating our unique production and sustainability story.
Is this change due to the high price of Australian beef? Or is it because of, China is one of your main markets and there are trade tensions going on? So that could be temporary, but is price a deciding factor for these markets?
Price can be a deciding factor, but the longer term effects will be from the severe drought conditions experienced in Australia during 2018 to 2019, and with the industry predicting it will take approximately 5 years to recover, we have seen pricing in market elevate. So unfortunately, I don't believe that there will be a short-term insight, but we certainly, as an organisation, we support our distributors as best we can, and we certainly communicate to them what is happening on a global scale so that there is an understanding there, because unfortunately some of these trends and global impacts are out of our control.
Sure, of course. Do you also see a reduction in beef consumption?
No, I don't believe that there will be. Look, some statistics do say that there has been a reduction, and I don't think it's a reduction per se, but more a change in focus. So when you look at actual trends in global meat proteins and what their trajectory is, then there will always still be a need for global proteins, and beef is one of those global proteins.
Okay, because I think I read research from China saying that given ASF and things like that, a lot of the younger millennials were shifting more towards poultry and beef, which is a good thing for you. So there is some shift, but there's also an aging population, and they're not going to be consuming a lot of red meat. So is there a concern for Stockyard? Do you have to change your strategy in future?
I think we have to play that as we go. So the game strategy is obviously being reviewed yearly, but at the moment we don't have any cause for concern, and we do believe like we have a growth trajectory for the next 5 to 10 years, and that's in doubling our capacity, and that is so that we are able to support the volume of growth that our distributors are demanding from us.
Finally, I know that Stockyard has won Australia's best steak 5 years in a row. So, so as a inspiration to other beef processors, what is your secret? What do you do best that others can learn from?
Well, so we are a family-owned business, and that certainly resonates within our organisation. And we have long-serving employees, and they are dedicated teams, and they are dedicating it in every aspect of our supply chain. So we can't tell you all our secrets, but the secret does lie in our rations and the rations that we feed to our animals. And so they're fed twice a day, and that ration is the secret to success.
Okay.
So from our perspective, like we are working to be carbon neutral by 2030. And we also are partaking in recent research and studies on ration consumption that can lower the level of methane that an animal will produce. And as we also have initiatives that we have, which I just mentioned, around our production in terms of what we're doing with our compost and manure. So that's quite innovative as well. So I think that there's a lot of information that's being produced by industry as well, that millennials are starting to, we're pointing them in the right direction, and so that they can have access to make an informed decision around lab-grown meat versus beef production, basically.
So basically you're saying that changes in the diet could actually reduce the emissions in the cows.
Yes, correct.
And obviously, I mean, in your opinion, compared to natural livestock production to lab-grown meats and things like that, do you think lab-grown meats are actually as green as they say it is?
No, so there's a lot of articles that are being circulated recently across social media, across scientific journals that are stating that lab and plant-based meat, look, it is here to stay. It will be another category, as I'd mentioned, but the World Resource Institution states that looking forward, total consumption of animal-based food is expected to rise. However, it also states that also per person animal-based food consumption may be peaking in developed countries where consumption's already high. So it is projected to rise, but we don't believe that there's an immediate concern for that.
Thank you for explaining that to us.
Thank you for listening to another Asian Agribiz podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to this show on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts.